violated. One malacha is the Torah is you're not let up plowing. Plowing is a malacha. Plowing, and that you violated the malacha of plowing. You did another malacha, the Gemara said, is you went ahead, if you plowed over seeds, if there were seeds in the ground, and you plowed over the seeds, so not only did you do the malacha of plowing, you did the malacha of sowing, you planted, because helping the seeds grow is a malacha of planting. Look, just like on Shabbat, there's a malacha called, you're not allowed to plant on Shabbat. And planting is independent of plowing, right? You could plant without plowing, you could plow without planting. But if you plowed in a way that both you accomplish the plowing and you also accomplish the planting, and how did you do that? By plowing over mixed seeds or plowing over seeds that were already planted in the ground. And now as a result of your plowing, the plowing covered the seeds. So now you are also simultaneously with that plowing violating two prohibitions. And the Gemara says when it comes to Yom Tov, the punishment for violating Yom Tov, in contrast to Shabbat, is that Yom Tov carries with it malchut. There's lashes for violating the Yom Tov. It's not like Shabbat. Shabbat, there's no lashes. Shabbat, the punishment is a much stricter punishment. For violating the Shabbat, a person gets death by the court. But by violating Yom Tov, there's no death by the court. But what is there by the court for violating Yom Tov? There is malchut by the court, and the Gemara said that even though there's malchut, we do not give if he did the way we would understand if he did separate malachot on Yom Tov. Let's say he plowed 10 o'clock in the morning on Yom Tov, and then at 11 o'clock he goes ahead and he plants on Yom Tov, right? Or he goes ahead and he cooks or he goes ahead and he builds a building on Yom Tov. So he did different malachot on Yom Tov. If he's warned separately for each one, he will get punished for each violation. But if the violations happen simultaneously at one time, he went ahead and he did one act and it carries with it two violations. So the Gemara said, "Ein chiluk malachot b'Yom Tov." When it comes to Yom Tov, he's not going to be obligated two sets of lashes for that one act of multiple violations on Yom Tov, of multiple malachot, multiple acts of work on Yom Tov. That's what the Gemara said yesterday. And what the Gemara today is, the Gemara is challenges. Abaye challenged it because Abaye found a case when a person cooked a gid hanosher. He cooked the sciatic nerve, where the Torah prohibits a person from eating the sciatic nerve. That's the story with Yaakov and Esav. When the angel of Esav hit Yaakov in the thigh, and the Torah says you cannot eat from that gid hanosher. So the Gemara gave a case that if he did multiple acts on Yom Tov, he cooked the gid hanosher on Yom Tov together with milk. So cooking the gid, the Gemara is taking the opinion that the gid has the sciatic nerve has some sort of taste, and because it has some sort of taste of meat, so there's a prohibition of cooking meat and dairy together with the sciatic nerve. So multiple violations are happening. He cooked this on Yom Tov, something, and there's no purpose of this cooking, the Gemara says, and therefore, because you can't eat this, we're allowed to cook on Yom Tov. The Torah says that on Yom Tov you could cook for the purpose of ochel nefesh, for food purposes. You need to eat it, but this you're not going to be able to eat because it's meat and dairy together. So there's no food purpose in cooking this sciatic nerve together with milk. So therefore, there's a violation of cooking on Yom Tov in this situation. There's a violation of cooking meat and milk together because we consider sciatic nerve meat. Those are two violations. And the Gemara also said, and he also ate it. He also violated the prohibition of eating meat and milk together. He also violated the prohibition of eating the sciatic nerve. That's 4 of the 5 prohibitions. And the Gemara says there's a 5th prohibition because of the fire. He made a fire on Yom Tov. He made a fire. He created a fire on Yom Tov, which he had no right to make that fire from scratch. So that's what the Gemara said. Yes.
He's connecting with the Parasha Mishpatim. They say in the Parasha, Lo terashel gidi v'chalavimo, right?
Very good. Meat and dairy together in the Parasha. Very good. Torah prohibits meat and milk together in this week's Parasha. So the Gemara had a question. They were on the top of the page of Chaf Beis Lamed Aleph. Now, like we just said, making a fire, he violated this prohibition of making a fire. He created a fire in Yom Tov. So the Gemara said, "V'imita, if it's true that you can't give him two violations for one act, if he did one act, two violations of Yom Tov, so when he made this fire, what happened? He put the food, this pot of the sciatic nerve that was with milk together. He put it on top of a stove. Good morning, Ilya. And then he turned on the fire. Then he made the fire. And this fire is a prohibition because this fire is not made for the purpose of eating, for use for eating on Yom Tov, because you cannot eat this food. And we said yesterday that making a fire is considered, the allowance of making a fire Yom Tov. We said yesterday that you could go ahead and use a fire from a pre-existing flame on Yom Tov. You could light candles, right? But we don't make a fire from the beginning. We don't create a fire in Yom Tov. And creating a fire on Yom Tov for a purpose that has no use for the day would be definitely a biblical prohibition. Would be considered a biblical prohibition. The question we said yesterday would be, if you make a fire from scratch on Yom Tov, which you're not allowed to do, even for food purposes, if you did do it for food purposes, whether that's a rabbinic prohibition, a biblical prohibition, that's something to look into. But making a fire, definitely you don't make a fire from scratch. You're not allowed to. But making a fire from scratch for something which has no purpose for the day is definitely one of the malachot, one of the violations of Yom Tov. So now the Gemara's question is, when he made the fire under the pot of the meat and the dairy. So what happens as a result of that is, what's happening is two violations are happening. One, he made the fire, and two, at the same time, he's doing the cooking, right? How do you warn someone for cooking on Yom Tov, right? There's a prohibition. You're not allowed to cook on Yom Tov for something which has nothing to do for the eating of the day, right? The allowance of cooking on Yom Tov is specifically allowed for your use, it's for your eating purposes. But if you're cooking on Yom Tov, not for eating purposes, right? That's a violation. Now, how do you violate the prohibition of cooking on Yom Tov? How do you violate the prohibition of cooking on Shabbat? If you turn on the fire, the moment you turn on the fire, and then a certain amount of time passes, then you are obligated for cooking. But the action of the cooking was done the moment you turn on the fire. But it takes a certain amount of time for the thing that you put on the fire to actually eventually cook. But the warning and the action of the violation is done when you put on the fire. So the Gemara is saying, why are you obligating him two sets of lashes on Yom Tov for this one act of making a fire and cooking at the same time, if you told me that when you do one act on Yom Tov, one action, and two malachot, two acts of work are being done, two different acts of work are being done in this one act, you told me you did not give the person separate sets of lashes for that one act. That is the Gemara's question. Marcus, is that clear? That's what the Gemara wants to understand. So how could you give him, the cop is giving him violations, for this one act. He put on the fire, and we're telling on Yom Tov, he put on fire for meat and milk together, and we're throwing at him two sets of lashes for that act. But we said Yom Tov in one act, and if you're violating Yom Tov, and you're doing multiple malachot, multiple acts of work, right? The Torah says, don't do work. What's called work? So we define certain things are called work. Cooking for no purpose on Yom Tov is called work. Making a fire on Yom Tov for no purpose is called work. The only allowance is for purpose of food purposes, we give that allowance. But you told me we don't give two sets of lashes. You see, you told me if it's done at the same time, one act by Yom Tov. So why is it that we count that as two separate prohibitions and two sets of lashes? That's the Gemara's challenge, and what he wants to do by challenging him, he wants to say he wants to suggest. Good morning. He's suggesting that maybe Yom Tov you would give the person separate sets of lashes for one act if it was multiple acts of malacha of work. That is what he's trying to say to him by asking his question. Ve'im ita, that now on the top of the page, 22a. Ve'im ita, if it is true that you, like Rava said, that you cannot give the guy multiple tickets, multiple lashes for one act on Yom Tov that carries with it two acts of work, mishum havara lo mechayav. He should not have been given a separate punishment of lashes for the fire, for the violation of making a fire, because you could obligate him because of the cooking. Because of the cooking, you should say he only gets one of the two. He'll get the violation of cooking, or he can give him the violation of the fire. The Gemara picks, the commentators ask, why does the Gemara say it this way? The Gemara says, why obligate him for the fire? You're obligating him for the cooking. And I would just suggest perhaps the Gemara says, let's obligate him for the cooking, because we already said you're obligating him for the cooking of meat and dairy together. So we were focusing already on the violation of cooking. So instead of creating a new name, just say another violation of cooking, which is like, it's a chiddush to say that you could be violating, you could get two sets of lashes for the cooking aspect. One aspect is
but it's not connected to Yom Tov, Rabbi.
But it's for one again. The Gemara is not very good.
I'll give him the one to do the fire because
right, but the Gemara is not asking he shouldn't get lashes for morning, Nathan. Welcome back. The Gemara is not asking the question he shouldn't get lashes for cooking. For cooking, you made Yaron in France in Paris very happy. He heard your name. He's smiling away. The Gemara doesn't ask the question that he should not get lashes for cooking meat and meat together, right? Because meat and milk together are a separate prohibition. That's not about Yom Tov, right? Meat and milk together is prohibited to cook all the time. The Gemara's question is, Yaron, regarding Yom Tov, we should not give him two sets of lashes for violating the prohibition. There's one prohibition of Yom Tov is don't do malacha on Yom Tov, right? And in malacha, there are many things that I can't do on Yom Tov. Many malachot I can't do on Yom Tov. Many acts of work are defined just like on Shabbat. There are many things that are called working on Shabbat, right? Making a fire on Shabbat, cooking on Shabbat, building on Shabbat. Those are all different types of acts of malacha. So the Gemara's question is, how could you told me you don't give him two punishments for two sets of lashes from doing multiple acts of work in one action? So the Gemara says, so how do you tell me he gets two sets of lashes for making a fire where he's doing two things on Yom Tov? He's doing a violation of making a fire for no purpose of food, because we're talking about a case, Nathan, that he made the fire for cooking meat and dairy together, which you can't do. We said even for food, regular food, you can't make a fire from the beginning. But the Gemara is saying we should give him. How could you say he gets two sets of lashes? He did one act. So that's what the Gemara's question is. You should not obligate him for making the fire, You should give him the obligation because of the cooking. You can't give him two violations for one act on Yom Tov, for violating two acts of work on Yom Tov. So that's the Gemara's question. So what the Gemara says, you're right. The Gemara says, "Apik havara va'ayul gid hanosha shel nevela." The Gemara says we are not going to count the fact that he made a fire on Yom Tov as one of the violations, because once you're going to obligate him for cooking for that act, you will not obligate him for making a fire. One act, you can't give him two sets of lashes for doing two different acts of work on Yom Tov. Is that clear? We welcome everybody to the class. Welcome. So the Gemara says, what is number 5 on the list? So the Gemara says, "Va'ayil gid hanosha shel nevela." What's the case? The case is the sciatic nerve of an animal that was not slaughtered. You had a kosher animal, okay? And a kosher animal, in order for you to eat a kosher animal, has to be slaughtered. If you don't slaughter it, let's say the animal dies, that's called an nevela. And that animal, now there's a prohibition for you to eat a dead animal that wasn't slaughtered. So now here's another violation which has nothing to do with Yom Tov. So therefore we could give him an extra set of lashes, because it's not another act of work on Yom Tov. It's a total different prohibition that he's being violated here through this eating. What is this new prohibition that's being violated through eating? Because it happens to be that the sciatic nerve was also a sciatic nerve of a dead animal, of an animal that was a kosher animal that died. So there's a prohibition on that kosher animal that died. There's now another prohibition called another violation. You did another thing wrong. Not only you ate a sciatic nerve, you ate a sciatic nerve of a dead animal. So now we have a new prohibition on the sciatic nerve. So how many prohibitions we have on the sciatic nerve? Good morning, Mr. Safdie. We have a prohibition because this sciatic nerve was also mixed together with milk. So now you're violating, by eating it, you're also eating meat and milk together. So now, because the sciatic nerve is mixed with milk, so in this one eating, we have 3 violations, the Gemara said. You're eating meat and milk together, you're eating sciatic nerve, and you're eating of a dead animal. So if we're going to focus in for a second, you can ask the question, this, the sciatic nerve, when the sciatic nerve was created, the animal came to this world, the sciatic nerve was forbidden. So now the question is, we have a rule, most opinions hold, once this thing is already prohibited, ain't isur halal isur. A new prohibition is not able to take hold on something that's already prohibited. If this thing was already prohibited, say that again. To eat pork is prohibited. So now eating it with cheese. So now the question would be, because there's a special law, that meat and dairy together, the prohibition the Torah is talking about from a kosher animal. And that's the prohibition. It's not from a kosher animal, but that's for a different reason, because even though we said good morning, Yosef. Even though we said that one prohibition cannot take hold on another prohibition, that's only if the second prohibition is not adding anything new. It's not bringing anything new to the table. But if the second prohibition is bringing something new to the table, then that second prohibition has power to take hold, because it's not just doing the same, it's adding something new. So when it comes to meat and dairy together, it does add something. Why? Because let's say a gid hanosher, a sciatic nerve, you're not allowed to eat. But technically you could cook a sciatic nerve. I want to go to culinary school and I want to cook a sciatic nerve. And the Torah does not prohibit me to cook. It would seem, I don't think I'm prohibited to cook. Again, I'm not using my pots. I'm going, but my pots, then I'm gonna make my pots not kosher. The sciatic nerve is not kosher. Correct, you're correct. If I go into culinary school where they're using their pots, I can't practice on meat and dairy together in the culinary school. I can't, because I'm cooking meat and dairy together. Even though I'm not eating it, I can't cook meat and dairy. Someone has a maid in the house and she brings her own pot. Like we said, we don't recommend it. Don't let her bring her own pot, cook her own food. But she's, for me to turn on the fire on her pot that is meat and dairy together, there's a prohibition in our Torah. I can't cook meat and dairy together. Now, so getting back to Chazir. So, or let's say the sciatic nerve. The sciatic nerve, let's say, is forbidden already. You're not allowed to eat it. But benefit on the sciatic nerve, you're allowed to have benefit. I could sell the sciatic nerve. I could cook the sciatic nerve, technically. So now, if I take that sciatic nerve and I cook it with milk, I've added a new prohibition to the sciatic nerve that wasn't there before. Because before I was not allowed to eat it, but now that I cooked it with milk, I can't have benefit from it, because you're not allowed to benefit from meat and dairy cooked together. You can't sell it, meat and milk there together. I can't cook it. So something was added to this food, a new prohibition was added. So then the second prohibition has power to come on, because it's contributing something, it's doing something here. So that would be the same thing. That's why there could be a prohibition on this, a second prohibition on the sciatic nerve called basar b'chalav. It could take place if the sciatic nerve could not only be forbidden because of sciatic nerve, it now could become forbidden because it's another prohibition of meat and dairy together. Is it clear? Is it clear what we're saying? But now now the animal died, right? So now my question is, and nevela, an animal that died, what's that halacha? You're not allowed to eat an animal that died, but you could sell it, right? You could sell. You're not allowed to go into a business. You're not allowed to go into a business of not kosher food. Dead animals for food purposes. Animals that, I'm only selling dead animals. I shoot animals and I sell them. There's no slaughtering, and I'm doing a business or not kosher fish. I can't go into such a business. I'm selling not kosher fish.
17.
But if I wanted to slaughter this animal. I wasn't in the business of not kosher animals. I'm in the business of kosher animals, but the slaughtering didn't come out good. Morning, Simon. What do you do with the animal? The slaughtering didn't come out good, or the animal died. You're allowed to sell it. The Torah says don't eat it. So those fish, because you weren't intending to go fishing for the purpose of catching not kosher fish, and I'm coming here to go fishing to sell not kosher fish. If I want to come and go fishing to sell oysters, whatever, that I would not be able to create a business of I'm selling lobsters. I'm going to catch lobsters. I'm going to sell lobsters. I can't do that business. I can't be in that business. But if I went ahead and while I was fishing for kosher fish, I caught it, then I could go ahead and sell it. So now getting back.
Can I cook it, Rabbi?
What'd you say? What'd you say, Aaron?
The nevela, can we cook it?
Okay, very good. So nevela, there's no prohibition of the Torah of you cooking. Of course, it'll ruin your pot if you cook a dead animal. There's no prohibition for you to cook. The Torah does not forbid you to cook a non-kosher animal. You can go to culinary school and cook that thing. So now the question is, what new prohibition was added to this sciatic nerve when the animal dies? There was already a prohibition when the animal was alive. There's a prohibition already on the sciatic nerve, and nothing doesn't seem like anything was added. But when the animal dies, the rest of the animal, which was not had no prohibition on the rest of the animal, because you would slaughter it and you would be able to eat it. Now the rest of the animal becomes forbidden as a result of the death of the animal, because the animal died and that wasn't slaughtered. So then we have a rule: once the prohibition already is taking hold of the rest of the animal, so then it could take hold on meaning it is already the prohibition of the whole animal. So once the whole animal has the prohibition of dead animal, so then we could, even though it's nothing new for this sciatic nerve, so there is a question in the Gemara, and our Gemara, let's say, is going with that, whether we would say that once the prohibition takes place on the rest of the animal, we don't say, okay, the prohibition of a dead carcass takes place on 99% of the animal, but it doesn't take effect on this 1%. So we say that we would say it would take effect. That's what this Gemara is saying. That once the prohibition of a dead animal, here we have a dead animal, okay? We have a dead animal on the table, and now this dead animal, here we have the sciatic nerve, and here we have the dead animal. So until now, this animal was able to be eaten. I would slaughter it, I could eat it. This sciatic nerve was already forbidden while the animal was alive. But now that this animal died without slaughtering, so now there's a prohibition going on this animal of dead animal, not slaughtered. But this dead animal, but the sciatic nerve is part of this dead animal. So we have a law, according to some opinions, that's called that it's a kolel, that once the prohibition of nevela takes hold on 90% of the animal, we say it also would take hold on that part that was forbidden already from some other reason. But you're not going to split and say, okay, the prohibition of the vela takes place on 90% of the animal and doesn't take place on that other 10%. Because once the prohibition of, you identify this animal as a dead animal that was not slaughtered, you're not going to say, okay, the prohibition only goes on this part, but not on this part. If the whole question was only the sciatic nerve, and then the sciatic nerve is already forbidden, and now you want to put another prohibition on this sciatic nerve, independent of anything else, has not connected anything else, it has to have add something, or it has to be part of something big, greater. But if it's only about this thing, and then we would say, Ein isur chalal isur. Once it's prohibited, it doesn't have space to create another prohibition. It's already forbidden if you eat. But if the second prohibition is either adding something new to the item, like we said by basar v'chalav, it added a new dimension to this sciatic nerve. Before, the sciatic nerve was only forbidden to eat, and now if you cooked it with milk, now you can't even have benefit from it. So there's something new coming. So then it would create the prohibition of eating also on the sciatic nerve, by once you cook the meat and the dairy together, because it added something new. So there's two possibilities. Either you're adding something new on this item, or if it's part of a bigger, it's connected to it. We said the cooking, it doesn't add anything new on this sciatic nerve, but being that, but it's part of a animal that something new happened to the rest of the animal that wasn't here before. Even though on this there's nothing new being added, but since this sciatic nerve is part of this animal, and the prohibition of nevela took effect on the other part of the animal. So once it takes part on that part of the animal, we say it incorporates this part as well. We don't separate and say, okay, this prohibition of dead animal took effect only on 90%. We'll call it nevela on 90 and not a nevela on 10%. If you're identifying this animal as a nevela, right, Simon? You called it a dead animal and you prohibit. It's 100% a dead animal, and you're going to have to, and you put the prohibition also on this part as well. So that's what
Rabbi,
yes.
When he became
Really
nevela,
nothing new, but we are saying it. But we could create but we adding a prohibition to this sciatic nerve. The prohibition of eating a dead animal. The cop is going to give another violation. You violated by eating the sciatic nerve 3 sins at this one time. What did you say? That's true. Even though you couldn't eat it anyways, but we could still put on the guy. You didn't change anything, but we said even though there was nothing added, there's no added aspect to the sciatic nerve, but we said we have still a way to give him a prohibition on this of eating the sciatic nerve because of a dead animal. Even though what did you add? So what did we say, Mark? The fact that it was part of this animal, that's what we said. Even though nothing was added, there's no new added, that whatever was prohibited before you eat, you can't eat it now. But it still has room for this prohibition of forbidden to eat a dead animal to take effect on this sciatic nerve. you hear the point? I don't know if it's clear.
The,
We're saying that this sciatic, the question was, how could we make this sciatic nerve more, a new prohibition on this when already was prohibited? That was the question. And the answer is meaning, how could we give him a ticket, a lesson for violating the Torah? The Torah says you're not allowed to eat a dead animal. And you're telling me you're giving him, and this sciatic nerve, this was part of a dead animal. It wasn't slaughtered. The animal was slaughtered. And you want to, right, but yes. See, it could be that there's no second prohibition if the Chazir died. Because the whole, number one, again, so first it could be because the Chazir was forbidden to eat before and forbidden to eat afterwards. But there's no new prohibition that took hold on the rest of the other 90% of the pig. But here, there's something new that's happening here by the sciatic nerve. What's happening new by the sciatic nerve? Not the sciatic nerve itself, something new is happening, but what's happening is the other 90% of the animal that the sciatic nerve is attached to. That is what's happening, Mark. It doesn't make a difference. The question here is, can we place a new prohibition on this animal, on this sciatic nerve, which was not here before, call it the prohibition of the sciatic nerve is part of a nevela. We're going to identify the sciatic nerve as part of a dead animal.
so Rabbi,
And-
we should
and
remove the
that's what an
prohibition
animal
of the
we want to
Gid
give
Hanashe.
lashes, also another set of lashes. Not only for what? For eating a sciatic nerve. Not only for what? Cooking meat and milk together, and he cooked with this sciatic nerve. Also, nevela. Is there a prohibition? Is there a lo say that's attached to this sciatic nerve called nevela? Dead animal, not slaughtered. So you say, now it is a dead animal, it's not slaughtered. But you tell me, but there's no room to take effect that prohibition because it's already forbidden. So we say this is one opinion that says that since this sciatic nerve, right, Nathan, is part of an animal. It's a part of an animal. And the prohibition of nevela took hold on the 95% of that animal that the sciatic nerve is connected to. So since it took hold on the other 95% of the animal, which was not here before that animal died, you could eat the other parts of the animal. But now, when the animal dies and wasn't slaughtered, that the rest of the animal now becomes forbidden. And since the sciatic nerve is part of that rest of the animal, and the rest of the animal became forbidden, called nevela, dead, not slaughtered. So we say that this is part of since it's part of this big animal, we can also connect the prohibition of nevela that went on the other 90% of the animal. Now there's a new prohibition called nevela. It's a dead animal that you're not allowed to eat. That prohibition is now able to come on to this sciatic nerve. That's the logic behind that. Even though nothing was added for the sciatic nerve, it's not more prohibited now than before. But the only thing is now attaches to the sciatic nerve the prohibition of nevela, of a dead animal. Yes, someone wanted to say something.
Rabbi, yeah. So when in this case, we should remove, when nevela take effect, we should remove the prohibition of Gid Hanashe. Because
once again, the Gid Hanashe, the sciatic nerve was forbidden before, it doesn't get removed. The question is, can the next prohibition come on? That's the question. And you need to have a situation to create the second prohibition to take effect on the top of the first prohibition. That's the issue with we have the Gemaras talk about Ein Isur Halal Isur. A prohibition cannot take effect on another prohibition unless there's something else or some added or it's part of something bigger. Okay, I just wanted to clarify because that's a beautiful thing that needs the clarification. So the Gemara says, that's what the Gemara says. You bring in Gid Hanashe Shel Nevela, and that's what we got. That's how we get 5. So the Gemara says, Vatani Rav Chia. Rav Chia says, Lo kishtayim al achilato. We get 2 sets of lashes for eating. V'shalosh al bishulo. and he gets, in this case, when he went ahead on Yom Tov, and he cooked the sciatic nerve with milk on Yom Tov, Rav Chia says there's 2 prohibitions for eating, and he gets 3 prohibitions for the cooking, which we understood is that the prohibitions for the eating is eating the sciatic nerve and eating basar b'chalav. That's 2 prohibitions on the eating. 3 prohibitions on the cooking would be the cooking basar b'chalav is a prohibition. We understood making the fire is a prohibition, and like cooking on Yom Tov is a prohibition for something that's not needed. So the Gemara says, "Bavim ita," if it's true that you remove havara, making the fire, so then there's shalosh al achilatohu chayer. He's obligated 3 violations on the eating. Because what's the 3 on the eating? Because we said the 3rd one is now eating the velah. So you don't have 3 on the cooking, you have 3 on the eating. So why does it say there's 3 violations on the cooking? There's only 3, there should be only 2 on the cooking and 3 on the eating. What's the 3 on the eating? It's the velah, it's kiran asher, and it's basar b'chalav. So how could you tell me there's only 2 prohibitions on the eating? That's the Gemara's question. If you're telling me that the new thing that we're entering into this picture is that it's a sciatic nerve of the velah, of a dead animal, so then it comes out there's 3 prohibitions that are being happening on this eating this thing, and yet the rabbi identified there's only 2 prohibitions on the eating. That's the Gemara's question. Is that clear? The rabbi said, Rav Chia said there's 2 prohibitions for eating this case. So it seems like he's not including dead animals. It can't be. And if it's true that we're talking about a sciatic nerve of a dead animal, then there should be 3 prohibitions on the eating: dead animal prohibition, sciatic nerve prohibition, and eating meat and milk together. So the Gemara says, you know what? You know why it's 3 on the cooking? Because we're removing the sciatic nerve of a dead animal. We're not talking about the animal died. The animal was slaughtered. But what is the case talking about? The wood that you cook this meat and dairy together was wood from a sheva tree. They used to worship this tree, a big tree. They made it into a power. They made it into an idol. And if it's a tree, and if you make a fire on that asherah, that's another prohibition, because you're not allowed to benefit from avodah zarah. So therefore, using avodah zarah as fuel, that's how he's going to get another 3 sets of lashes for this one act of making this fire. He made a fire on Yom. What did you say? No, they're going to be 5 because we. No. Now there's only 3 for cooking. 3 for cooking because he was cooking meat and dairy together. He's cooking on Yom Tov for no purpose, and also he made a fire. That cooking was a fire of wood of avodah zarah. Everyone comes to 5. The only question is what name those 5. We'll continue tomorrow. Fascinating Gemara, everybody. Very in depth today, everybody. We've got into very lumdus. Have a great day, everybody. Mr. Safdie,
thank you, Rabbi.
Have you tomorrow. And Yaron says hello to everyone from Paris.
Oh.
And Mark Ashby says his best, and I believe everybody sends their best to Yaron. Yaron, it's so nice that you're on, and Yosef at Tzaddik, good to see you as well. All the best, everyone. Have a beautiful day.
Have a great day. Thank you, Rabbi. Nathan, how are you?
Bonjour.
Hey,
Rabbi.
Rabbi, thank you.
Thank you.
Rabbi.
Yes.
Question. So the meat that are in the stores is called nevela, right?
All the meat in the stores and not kosher stores on nevela prohibited to eat because even though it comes from an animal that's kosher, it would be nevela. Right, dead animal.
Do you allow to cook it?
You would ruin your pots. All your pots will be ruined if you were cook. Thank you for joining. You're around. You live around here? So we'd love to have you. 6:45 Monday through Friday. Thank you very much for coming. What's your name? Yaakov what? Very nice. Welcome. From Brazil. You're wanted man here at the class. Love to have you. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. So we're Monday to Friday, make yourself comfortable. There's a beautiful breakfast after davening. There's davening upstairs, Tfilah. Great breakfast downstairs. Thank you for joining. Thank you very much. Hold on one second. Yosef, when you answer Yosef, 1 second. We take numbers over here. No, I'm joking. Yosef, you can't, if your person would cook a non-kosher animal, the pot will be ruined.
Okay,
Then
that's what I was
you-
thinking. But
Yes, you would lose your pot. But you would not technically, if a person goes to, would I be able to put the fire on such a pot? Let's say, I'm at work and there's a non-Jew at work and he has his own pot and he asked me to turn on the fire. Is it prohibited for me to turn on the fire of a pot of a non-Jew? So if there's no meat and dairy, if there's meat and dairy in the pot, it'll be prohibited. But if the pot wasn't used in 24 hours, and there's no meat and dairy in the pot, technically I could turn on that fire. I'm not eating from it. It's not my pot. But if the pot it was used for meat and dairy, and has meat and dairy in it, and it's been within 24 hours, then I would not be able to turn on that fire. I can't
I
put
got
on a fire. You got it? Even though
yeah.
I have no use of eating it. Okay, you got yours. Have a beautiful day.